Welcome everyone to the day 8. Today we're going to talk about very important concept in Java, which is around the methods. What are methods? Why do you need to learn it? What are the static method? What are the instance method? All of those. Let's get started with the hands-on manner. Let's try to talk and understand the very first thing, which is called as a method. Now, what does the method mean? Sometime back in the previous session, I told you that normally in the modern days, we are always trying to create the applications to solve the real world problem, right? And the real world problem involves the real world entities. Fair. For example, the real world will comprise the real world entity like humans. Now if you see, we do few things which are everyday repetitive. For example, we know that how do we eat, because we eat multiple times a day. We know that how to go out to the bed and sleep. We know how to go and dance. So all these behavior that we are doing, the actions that we are doing day in and day out, you can think of more of like a methods. So methods are typically in Java are used to depict behavior. Methods are nothing but basically they are being used to depict the behavior in the world of Java. Fair enough? Does it make sense? Cool. So in nutshell, what are the methods? Methods are typically trying to replicate how the real world objects behave, right? Be it a living thing or a non-living thing. Now since we have understood this, what does it mean in the real world? Let's try to see that how we go and define a method, right? So if I have to go and define a method, every method will have two parts. One part is called as a method signature, plus one part is called as a method body, right? So this is signature and the part is called as body. How does you go and define a method? So every method that you go and define has to have a name. For example, it should have a method name. And the convention says that the method name should always start with a small letter and it should be in the camel case if you are doing in the world of Java. Followed by the method can have 0 or more parameters. So here you can have the parameter which is optional. This is optional. Optional means it could have 0 or more. Then there is something called as the visibility of the method. For example, I go and call it as access modifier. We go and provide an access modifier. For example of that could be public, private. Now just hold on for a few minutes. We'll talk about the access modifier in details, but I know that for every method that you go and define, you have to go and provide some kind of access modifier. Then you also have to go and say that the method belongs to the class or the method belongs to the object. Now what class and objectives we'll go and talk about in a while when we start the OOPS concept in the Java. But for now, understand that every method will belong to a class and that we go and represent by a keyword called as a static. So when I go and make use of the keyword called as a static before any method, it means that that method belongs to the class. For now, just understand that. When we get started with the OOPS, I'll make sure that you have the complete clarity. So I have the access modifier. I have that this method belongs to the class. I also have to go and say that does method return anything? Or if it returns, what is the return type? So typically I have to go and represent what does the method return. So if it returns anything, I have to go and provide the type like int, or if it doesn't return anything, I have to go and use a keyword called as a void. So the void represents it doesn't return anything. So this is how typically this whole thing that you see here on this line, right? This whole thing is called as method signature. And then a method always starts with the curly brackets and then you write the logic. Inside this you go and write the logic. Whatever the code that you have written inside the method between these two curly brackets, this is called as method body. So this is how the structure of a method look like. Now let's get started, directly jump to the code and see that how we can get started. So now on my Eclipse right now, let me go and define this method called as public static void main string args. So this main method which helps you execute, this itself is also a method, right? If I go and try to see, right, if I go and try to see this code which is coming on your screen right now, this again which I just talked about is an access modifier, and we'll talk about it in detail very soon. This indicates that it belongs to the class. So as of now, if I go and tell you any method that you go and define, it belongs to either class or it belongs to either object. Now what is class, what is object, how these two are related and different, we'll talk in a while, just hold on. But if I have to make any method which is attached to the class, I use a keyword called as static, so it means that I am belonging to the class. Void means that this method do not return anything. So this public static void method is not returning anything. And this thing, you know that it is basically an array of strings, and anything which you go and pass here, this is called as a parameter. So this is a parameter to this method that I have defined. So this is a very basic example of the method. Another thing that you have already been seeing where I have been making use of the methods is, say for example, inside this I want to print anything, right? Let's say that I go and say let's just out, and I say that hello world. If you focus around in this also, when you go and call this println, this println is nothing but a method. Method is being called, right? And what you pass in, this one, this is called as an argument. So when you go and define a method and whatever you say that, okay, hey, this method expects a string array, this will be called as an parameter. And when you go and actually pass the value when you're calling that function, that method, that typically is called as an argument. Again, methods in Java, you can also relate it to the functions, the word functions which you use in the other programming languages. So here the methods in the world of Java is one and the same as how you consider the functions in other programming languages. So don't get confused if we interchangeably make use of word functions in the place of methods. But wherever possible, we'll try to stick with the vocab of using methods. Now let's try to define our own methods and then let's try to execute it. So for example, let's say that I go and define a method, and let me go and call it as public static void, and I go and call it as print junk. If you see here, I have said that this method is public, this belongs to the class, this does not return anything, and this is the name of the method. Right, inside that I have to go and add some logic. So let me go and add a logic called as sysout, and I go and print that hello world again. Right. So this is how I go and define this method, and it's not returning anything. So this portion that you see is the method body, and this whole section which you see here could be considered as a signature. Now once you have defined a method, you can always go and call it. Now in this program, which is the section where I can go and execute the code or call something else? That's the main method. So inside the main method, if I want, I can go and call this. So I can go and say that print junk and put enter. Now one thing before I go and execute, you have to monitor here is that print junk is what is the whole function. If I have to go and execute it, I go and call it and then pass the exact number of arguments. So for example, in this case, it does not expect any argument, so I just go and pass empty. I don't pass anything else. So now if I go and run this, right click, run as Java application, let's try to. Add is printing hello world, since we know that the Java expression have a line by line. First this line executes, so it prints hello world. Then it goes here, it comes inside this function, prints hello world again. Now when I said when you're calling the method, you have to ensure that it matches this method signature. So for example, I know that this print chunk does not have any parameter. If I go and pass any specific arguments here, let's say that I go and say that Vishwa. If I go and do this, you can see this red circle coming up, which indicates that it's a compilation error, and it is happening because I'm trying to call a method which accepts one argument string, but I have no such method available here, and that's why this is giving me an error. So I cannot call a method without satisfying its signature. It's very, very important. So what I go and do here is that let me go and remove this, and then this error will go away. Now let's join another method which takes some arguments. So let me go and define another method called as bring chunk2, and here I go and say this string name hello again, and I go and say plus name. Now in this case, if I go and call this bring chunk2, it is expecting one argument, right? So if I have to go and call this again, I go and say that print chunk2, and I have to go and pass some name, so I go and pass Vishwa. And if I go and run this, run application, it's working as expected, right? It's execute line by line. First this line executes, so it prints hello world. Then I come here, it prints hello world again, and then I again come here, it prints hello world Vishwa. So we are seeing that line by line execution is happening. Again, if I go and reiterate here, few things. When you go and define this, this is called as an parameter, and when you actually go and pass the value, this is called as arguments. So I believe by now you should be able to have a very clear distinction between what is the argument versus parameter. Let's quickly define one more method which also takes some parameters and also returns some value, not a wide one. So let me go and define a method called as add. I go and call it as public static int add method, and I go and say the int a comma int b, and then I go and as soon as I have defined a proper data type, it is throwing me error because it will expect something to return. The method signature says that dude, this method add will take two numbers and it should return an integer. So I have to make sure that if it is int is added in the signature, I have to return something, and return something should also be of the type int itself. So let me go and put things here, and let me go and write here return a plus b. Again, return is a keyword which indicates that it helps us return the value out from the, and this value, this type should always match with the type which it is returning. For example, instead of this, if I go and say that I go and return a string, so let me replace a plus b with something called as Vishwa. With something called as Vishwa. So when I go and do this, again it is throwing me an error, as you can see here. Correct. This is expecting int and I'm returning string. There's a type mismatch, so we have to make sure what I'm returning is exactly the value. So I go and say that return a plus b. Now if I go and call this function here, which is add, and I go and pass 5,6 and run this, I see that nothing happened. I've called add 5,6. it would have executed this code, but nothing is happening in the console. Why? Can you guys make a guess? The reason for that is this would have returned some value, say for example 11. I have to go and store somewhere to use it. So if I have to go and make use of it, what I'll have to do, I'll have to go and store somewhere, say like int sum equals to sum. Again, the data type, the variable which is going to store this value, this should match with the return type of the method. The variable in which I'm going to store, that type should match with the return type of the method that I have added, right? Because for example here, if I go and change again, instead of int, I go and say that string, and we'll see that it will not compile, right? So it has to be int. Great. Cool. So now we have understood some good concepts around the method. Before we move further, if you see here, this public static void main is also static, and all these methods are also static. What if I don't use this keyword call as a static from this place? So let's say that if I go and remove this static, what will happen is that this is working all fine. When I go and remove this, this is working all fine. But here I see a compilation error. Compilation. It means that only a static method could be called inside another static method. It means that one, we can call method inside another method, and number two is that only static method can be called inside the static methods, right? Only static methods can be called inside the static methods. Now what is static method? It belongs to the class. We'll talk in detail about it. The method which does not have the static added in their signature are called as the non-static methods, or also called as the object methods. So we understood if I have a method which is static, it can only include or call another method which is also equally static. It cannot go and call the non-static method. That's number one. So now here I will go and now if I make another method as non-static, let's say that I go and make this method also as a non-static, and let me comment this also. A non-static method can go and call the another non-static method. For example, I can go and call this and pass here Vishwa. So if I go and call this, if you see here, I go and define this function which is a non-static. Non-static, why? Because static keyword is not used in the signature. This is making use of another function called as print junk2. And if I want, let me go and see if I can go and call the add method also. Inside this I can go and call it as add 5, 6. That is also allowed. So this a very peculiar result. We understood two things. If it is a static method, right, it can only go and call only static method. On the other hand, sir, if it is a non-static method, inside this I can call both static method also, I can go and call it, and anyways I can go and make a call to the non-static method. Very important concept. I think we should keep in the mind when we are framing the code. Also, you would have realized one thing. I am making use of this print junk and I am calling this print junk inside this, even though this print junk is defined later. So you can define the function or the method anywhere in the code, and you can even use it before it somewhere in the code. It will not give you any error, right? So this again gives you a flexibility of defining methods at any place. So this is how we have understood how we can go and define a method of different types. There are two types of the method, static and the instance, and how we can go and call methods one inside the another. So far we have been talking about calling methods inside each other. Let's try to see that how the methods from one class could be called inside the another class. Let's move. Now let's try to move further and see how the methods from the one class could be called into the another class. So for that, let's go and define another class called as class 1. And inside this class, let's go and define few static methods. So I go and say that public static void, and let me go and call it as hello, and let me go and print out something called as hello world. Okay. Now I want that this method which is defined in this class 1 should be visible in the another class. Let me go and call this as the the class 2, and inside this class 2 I have a method called as public static void main string args. And inside this method, I would like to go and call the method which was there in the class 1, right? Hello. So let me go and define something called as hello. Let's print it. If I go and try to call this method called as hello, I'm getting some kind of compilation error header. Can you guys make a guess why it is happening so? I'm getting some kind of compilation error. Why it is happening? It is happening because this hello is not inside this class. So anything which is not inside this class, I have to go and tell the class name also. Just for example, let's say that this is you and this is your father. If you directly try to go in your uncle's, or let's say that the neighbor's house, right? They might not know you, who you are, from where have you come. But every time when you go and take your father along, they will have the context. Okay, he is Sarmaji ka ladka. So because hello is not in this class 2, it's tough. I have to go and somehow go and say that who this guy hello is, from where the hello guy has come up, and all these things, right? So for doing this, I go and prefix hello with the name of the class called as class 1 dot hello. So now this is the class 1, which is Papaji, which is the father, and this is the method which is inside that. And that's where again that static keyword came up, because static belongs to the class. So I can just give the class name and I can go and say that hello. Now if I go and try to run this code, let's try to see, I go and see that hello world got printed. So this is how the method written in the class 1. I have a method written in the class 1 which is the hello. I go and call it in the class 2 also. I am able to go and call it in the class 2 here, right? I am able to go and call it in the class 2 by using the class 1 dot hello. Fair enough. Now let's make it a little more complicated. Right now both these classes are under the same folder called as com.amers. This is termed as package, right? In the world of the Java, we organize our code in the form of the folders called as packages. So if you see here, I have this project called as day 2. Inside day 2, I have some src folder. Inside src folder, I made something called as com, and then I have made something called as amers. And inside this, I have this class 1, class 2, test. So this whole folder structure that you can see, that com.amer, this is called as the package. So package is the entire directories and some directories from the root, which is called as source. This might be called as the root to the place where your files are. So what if I have a class which is defined in the another package, and I want to go and call the class from the another. So let me go and define another package itself. So inside this, let me go and define a package, Java package, and let me go and call it as com dot Vishwa. Right, so I have another package called as com dot Vishwa, and here let me go and define another class called as class 3. And inside the class 3, let me again go and define a static method called as public static void, and let me go and say that hello from Vishwa, and I'm going to say that sys, I'm going to write sys out, and I'm going to say hello from Vishwa. And let's say that now this class 3, as you can see the structure, right? This is the class 3. It has a static method called as hello from Vishwa, and it is here. I want to go and call this class inside this class 2, which is another package, which is another com.amers. So I come here, I come to the class 2 boss, and here I want to go and call this class 3 class called as hello from the Vishwa. So first of all, let's go and try to call directly the method. Am I able to find it? No boss, I'm not able to find it. Okay, let's try to go and prefix it with the class 3. Now even when I go and put the class 3, I'm not able to locate because this class 3 is of the different package. This class 3 that you go and see is of different package. It's more of like saying that, let's say there is a party, house party. There's a house party that you have arranged, right? And in this case, if the another guy comes with its father who was in the neighbor, then you'll be able to identify that person, right? But let's say there's another person who is coming, who is living in the another city, and he's coming with his son. Even if he comes to your party, you'll not be able to recognize just by the name itself. This person will have to give the more introduction. Hey, you know what, we used to work together in the past, I have been moved to the other city, and if they give you the full introduction, then you'll be able to know them. So when there's a class from when there's a method in a class and that class in another package, if I have to go and make use of it, I will have to go and know the complete path. And for that, I have to go and make use of a method called as, strategy called as importing, right? So I go and say the import, and then I go and say that com dot Vishwa, and then I go and do the dot star. Now what this means is that I'm saying that I have to go and inside this package, and dot star means that import all the classes inside the given package. You have to import all the classes inside the given package. So again, this is a very crucial, very common. Going ahead, we'll use it multiple times. Don't need to stretch yourself much, but we understand that if you have to go and make use of the methods of the classes from another package, I have to go and import them. So now if I go and save this, if I go and save this, sorry, yes, so I go and save this and run as Java application. Let's see that hello world, hello from the Vishwa, and it's working. So I have the multiple classes and they are still working. Now let's try to tweak something. In this class 3, if I go and replace this keyword call as, let's say that in the class 1, I go and replace this keyword call as public and save it, and let's try to run this. So it worked well. So what I did, this class, if you see this class and the class 2, they are in the same package. When they are in the same package and I remove the public keyword before the method, still it is working all fine. But what will happen, let's say that in the class 3 I go and remove this public keyword and save it. Now if I go and see here, the class 2, it started showing the compilation error. So when we change the access modifier, now this public has been changed, it has started behaving differently. And that's where now we are all set, and I think it's a place where we have to understand the access modifier in detail. So finally, we have come to the end of day 8. We have talked a lot of things about methods. We took the hands-on example to understand static methods, class methods, their application, their uses. I hope your learning experience is coming great. Please let me know in the comments. Share with your friends. Let's make sure that next 30 days we are on the track. There is no backlog and we are learning as the video is coming up. And next 30 days we just master Java.